Welcome to Inclusive Cyber, your front row seat to understand how a diverse mix of voices is not just necessary, but essential to protect our most sensitive computer networks and personal data. I'm your host, Danny Magallanes, and through my podcast, we shine the spotlight on the heroes and trailblazers from every corner of society who are redefining the diversity, equity, and inclusion frontier. Every episode is a step towards a cyber community that's as varied as it is united, where everyone has the keys to unlock their potential and the power to protect our digital world. Join us on this journey where every listen, every share, every dialogue inches us closer to this new reality. In this episode, we talked to Frantz. He's a technologist at heart. He was working at corporate America, but then decided to make the jump into entrepreneurship. And let me tell you, he's killing it. His company, GuideScope, is involved with a lot of different products and services when it comes to blockchain technology and cybersecurity. This episode is very technology focused, but still approachable. Technology is something we shouldn't be scared of, but something we should be embracing because it's going to make the world a better place. We talk about NFTs, non-fungible tokens, AI, machine learning. We even talk about a book he wrote with the help of AI, and much more. Please subscribe, like, and share. Hope you enjoy the episode. Frantz, welcome to Inclusive Cyber. How's it going today?
Doing well. Thanks for having me.
Yeah, super excited to talk to you. I know you reached out to me after a LinkedIn article that I posted last year, and we had several conversations, and your story really excited to dive deep into that because where you're at and where you're heading is super fascinating, and I think it will definitely resonate with the audience. So with that being said, let's just start off with a quick background.
So currently I'm located in Philadelphia, but I'm originally from Connecticut. I'm a first generation American. My mom came here and had me when she was 16. So it was very much got to figure things out on the fly. Went to private school for most of my life. So I'm very fortunate to have a good education coming from Connecticut. And then outside of that, I've been working in corporate America for the entirety of my career, working in IT specifically at companies like Gartner, Mimecast, Abnormal Security, but really getting to see the entirety of the industry in that way. So it's been a great journey so far.
And how did you initially get started in the IT cybersecurity industry? Was it something that you were exposed to early on? Was it through college?
It's funny. I am a huge advocate for YouTube University, and I was watching a podcast the other day, and he was talking about entrepreneurship, which is something we'll talk about a little bit later. But he mentioned that around age about 12, 13, most people have some type of incident that really changes their perspective on life because it gives them that self-power that they never really figured something out. For me, I had a PlayStation that broke. We didn't have the money to fix said PlayStation, so it was on me to figure out how am I going to fix this thing. And I think that's where the introduction into IT starts for me. How do I fix this technical thing now that it's broken? And incident response, right? There's a fix it. I did fix that PlayStation, but I think the skills and persistence that it takes to solve a problem when you don't know anything of issue. So this is when the internet's just coming out and dial-up and stuff like that. So I've got to figure out how do I even use the internet to fix said problem. So it was a lot of trial and error. And I think that's really been my approach throughout my career is how do I fit into this industry now that I know I do have a skill set that will allow me to.
Thank you for sharing that. I have a somewhat similar story, but back in the 80s with the original Nintendo. But we'll save that for another time. Let's dive deep into kind of where you're at right now in your career. I know you mentioned entrepreneurship, so let's dive into that a little bit.
Absolutely. I think entrepreneurship isn't something that I necessarily saw myself doing or kind of for myself. Originally, I started my career at Gartner, so very much I'm going to be a corporate America person. This is the direct I want to go. Big fish or small fish in a big pond, so it becomes tough to really see where you fit into that. So I really started to lean towards cybersecurity, and that's where I went to Mimecast to really learn that field. And then since then, I've gone to abnormal security and gone through like the AI things now that we're kind of in that boom. And that didn't work out for me. Really was let go. We can just get past that point. But getting let go really forced me to take a look at my skill set and see, okay, I have this skill set that I know is valuable, but how do I bring it to the industry? And I had gone through again YouTube University, so I saw that the content creation game was something that was really blowing up. We're obviously on a podcast right now, giving out content. So for me, it was like, okay, how can I do what I've done at these companies for such a long time and go directly to my customers and directly to the consumer and provide the value that I may be providing, but not really getting acknowledged for at least. So I recently started my own company called GuideScope, and even the name comes from what I was doing previously. I was guiding my customers on how to scope specific policies to their cybersecurity stack. So again, my name comes directly from the experience, but do I get the name if I don't go through the experience? So yeah, I've recently started that. And the goal of GuideScope is to really enable people just like myself to get the information that they might not get otherwise. I think, yeah, YouTube University is great. We have things like Reddit, Twitter, whatever, that are all great outlets. But you also do have to figure out how to sift through that information to find the true value within that so then you can act upon it. And not everyone has that time, especially when you have a full-time job that you're working, which, like myself, I was very much working a full-time job, 60 hours a week, and then trying to figure out, well, how do I then upskill myself so I can even expand within this industry. So it's really hard to do that. But now that I've had that time.
You mentioned something at the very beginning that when you're at Gartner, you kind of transition into cybersecurity. How did that happen? Were you actually doing cybersecurity work at Gartner for you to get exposed to that?
Uh, I was not actually. I think Gartner gave me a great lay of the land. I got to see the entirety of IT, but was I working with cybersecurity specifically? Not really. For me, honestly, I had moved to Boston, Massachusetts for a relationship, and I needed a job. So I was looking at what companies are within that area, and Mimecast was one of those companies. And I was like, okay, I do know IT. Let me see more about what cybersecurity really is. And I believe at that time, Hillary had been hacked. And that was something that came up in my interview process. It's like, hey, can you explain cybersecurity to me? And I brought that up, and that was something that impressed them. And I was like, okay, I impressed you with that, but that's like my just surface level understanding. I know I'm a very technical person. This is an area I could see myself excelling in once I do apply myself.
One of the things that I always mention with YouTube, cyber criminals don't go to school. They don't pay. They don't pay for certifications. So you're in corporate America. And I guess what was that triggering mechanism to say, hey, I want to be an entrepreneur? Because entrepreneurship, it's not for everyone. A lot of people are happy to do the 9 to 5 job, right? You know, there's nothing wrong with that. And then there's those individuals that say, you know, this isn't enough. I want more. I want something more potentially fulfilling, maybe more money, whatever their motivation. Walk us through your mindset.
I agree. I would say that this life probably isn't for everyone, but I also do believe that you're probably born with the skill sets to do it. I think that a lot of people may have that thought in the back of their head that they can do something very well, and they may be looking, I know this was true for me, looking for validation from a corporate America or this job, because especially not having a college degree and that coming up so much in my career, I began to maybe slightly doubt myself. But that didn't mean behind the scenes I wasn't still figuring out how do I build that framework so that when my time does come, I have a framework in place and I can just really excel at that point. Really never losing your confidence. I'd say that's the one thing that I didn't see happening in this journey for myself. I'm very much a confident person, fake it till you make it for a large chunk of my career. But then I realized that I was kind of making it. And from a KPI perspective, I was really excelling at whatever role that I was in, but I wasn't really getting that notoriety internally. So I think back to just corporate America, I believe there's a lot of politics that can be played. And as a first generation American, yeah, I can understand some aspect of these politics, but do I want to consume myself with the politics? Or do I want to come here to build the framework and learn the information and do the job that I've come here to do? And I think that mindset has been something that's allowed me to get back to the work, even when things seemed like I wasn't going to get past this challenge or this hurdle or transition to this industry or this role. It was really about remembering, yeah, why did I start this journey in the first place, and building on top of that. And I think that, yeah, that all of that had to happen in the way that it did to then even allow me to even see the world of entrepreneurship, because now I have the experience that I can share with other people that I wouldn't have had until I had gone through some of those things.
I really admire that whatever life throws at us, good or bad, we're still able to incorporate that and kind of mold it into what we want our lives to be there. So I think you're definitely doing that. So,
And
sure.
just to add one thing on that too, because I think you brought up a good point. That's a huge reason why I also started the company, and I think is going to help a lot of people who are kind of in that mindset. We all know that we've gone through a pandemic, which has changed not only the economy, but corporate America. And what does it mean to have a job? AI has now been thrown in this mix. How do I figure all of this out? Despite having this skill set, it's very difficult. So it's like, okay, how can I use all of this experience that I've gained to, yeah, then give back to a generation that might be lost?
Everything you said definitely resonates. So let's dive into GuideScope. What is GuideScope? What are the products and services that you're going to provide, and who are you wanting to target?
I would say GuideScope is a knowledge hub, specifically focusing on blockchain and cybersecurity. Self-expanding once I start to, get my footing. But right now, those are going to be the two areas that I'm looking to build on currently. I have a couple of different content areas that I do share content in currently, and that's daily. And that would be around blockchain security, cybersecurity, threat vectors, emerging technology. And then I have a CISO newsletter for CISOs, because I do believe that that's a role that's going to be growing, especially today. In terms of my audience, that was something that I was really struggling with getting into building this, because yes, I do want to enable the best and brightest to continue to expand on their knowledge, to continue the effort that we're all participating in today. But you also don't want to leave behind someone like myself who may not have had access to this information or understand how to get access to this information. So how do I create middle ground? So I do post a lot of free content within those spaces that I think are going to be great for any entry level person looking to get in either of those industries. Or to your point about the post COVID world that we're in, I saw a story the other day that the state of Ohio is going to now be paying kids money to stay in school, because, yeah, kids don't necessarily want to stay in school anymore. And I think that has to do with this post COVID era that we're in. These kids don't want to necessarily rush to corporate America and get a job that they don't think that they're going to enjoy, when they can learn to be a content creator or whatever they want to be, based off of the way the internet has grown. And now they have AI on top of that. So if they can learn the skill set to then monetize that, I think the economy is going to change in a dramatic way. And that Ohio stat is just, so I did put out a couple of courses that are going to be released by the end of February. I'll have my first one around digital real estate. And just a quick example of what that is. What we're doing right now is digital real estate. We're putting something out on the internet. We'll label it something that is going to be specific towards an audience. And then now that's on the internet. So now, as more people begin to search for that topic, you're now the first one to that space based off of when you've entered, and you just expound on that. The more views, the more. So I think that's where these kids have learned how to use the internet, to not necessarily go and have to send out a bunch of emails. I can just put out the content myself and go directly
Right.
to my consumer and just keep putting out that content. I just got to figure out how to monetize it. And I think we all do that for companies for free all the time, or pennies on the dollar. So how can I teach that to someone that know what digital real estate is, right? And that's just one class that I'll be releasing. But I also have a couple others. I have a CISO course that I'll be putting out, because I do think, again, that's going to be a role that we're going to see develop within the next couple of years, just based off of where we are in cybersecurity. I think that role is going to be more valuable day in and day out. I will be releasing an NFT marketplace course to teach kids how to make NFTs. I think NFTs are going to be a great source of passive income coming in the future, back to just putting out content. Not only can you create digital real estate, you can then put out an NFT and tie it to your digital real estate. So now you're making money in several avenues. And then the other two would be a AI and machine learning class, because obviously that's going to be growing at a rapid rate. Not only jobs not going to be here, jobs like customer success reps, the they have AI that can do all of that. So what happens to the customer success force out there? How can we figure out where they do fit in now that we have yeah, those are a couple of courses that I'll be releasing, and I'm going to create a book that goes with each course. So if you don't necessarily want to take the course and sit down and go through all that, I'll have a book tied to it as well. You can just buy the book and go through that information. And then back to YouTube University, I think it's very tough to watch a 3-hour video, get everything, take the notes down, read through comments. I do think that I've done that and figured that out in my own way, but I didn't have someone who packaged it up nicely and said, okay, this is what you really need to know and how you can act upon that. So that's really what I'm going to be focusing on, is really putting out free content for anyone looking to just understand the space, but then from anyone who may be in information technology or just looking to see what that is, especially when you talk about post-COVID world that we're in and a global perspective. There's a lot of people who are just getting to the internet and don't know anything about this. I think that they're going to find something like this.
A lot of great points. The first one I wanted to touch upon was Generation Z. You hear this negativity towards them, that they're lazy, they don't want to work. But you mentioned it. Why would they go to corporate America and only make pennies on the dollar, or not even a living wage, because everything's so expensive, where they can create all this content, whatever their passion is, and start monetizing that, right? In regards to all the different courses that you mentioned, very relevant, especially in this day and age, but just the wealth of information that is essentially at our fingertips. I remember growing up, we had the Encyclopedia Britannica, right? Good back then, but now obviously outdated, and just how information is obviously changing at a breakneck speed.
It's funny you brought up a point that I heard pretty recently. It's like, yeah, growing up, I had to physically go to a library to rent out information or sit at that computer and get the information. There was no information at my fingertips. So it's like, man, how far we've come. And to think that, yeah, that's how I get the experience, to then organize it in a format that says, hey, you may not even value this information yet because you're so used to instant gratification. That's where I don't think they're lazy. I think they're very much used to instant gratification. I can't blame them. I would be too. But there's a ton of valuable information that you might be overlooking because it's not being presented in proper format that you might like to ingest.
That's another thing. A lot of people learn differently. Some people are visual learners. I listen to podcasts when I run, but my sister-in-law is like, I can't do podcasts. I need either one-on-one interaction or read it from a book or from your computer screen. The other thing too, I wanted to touch upon that it's an excellent point, is the digital divide. Here in this country, there's still a swath of people that don't have access to the internet, high-speed internet, right? So with YouTube, video in dial-up connection or DSL, that's going to be choppy and very difficult to consume. And then obviously globally, it's probably even worse. One thing I wanted to kind of go back a little bit, when you mentioned your company focused on blockchain and cybersecurity. I think you addressed the cybersecurity, but both of those are big topics. With blockchain specifically, what are you focused on for prospective clients?
For blockchain, it's anything that's up to date in the news, really any top trending stories I'll be following. I do have a lot of what I did is I set up a lot of alerts. So anything that's coming in that's relevant in blockchain, I'm going through, I'm reading that content, I'm seeing if it's going to be relevant to my audience, but it ties into really the cybersecurity piece and the entirety of the classes that I'll be releasing, because I think each one of those elements now is going to be impacted by the blockchain, cybersecurity specifically. So it's like it all ties in some way. But for me, the blockchain right now, I really want to understand how can I teach people to monetize based off the blockchain and understanding smart contracts and tying it back to things like their digital real estate or NFT, or if they're even working with a company that's looking to get into that space, what does that mean for my company? And are there investment opportunities in different areas within blockchain? So as it begins to get incorporated into the system that we're now being kind of slowly pushed into with AI, figuring out how I can best monetize that and have, the blockchain just run my company for me to some degree, because I do have things like ChatGPT or Google's Bard or IBM's Watson, but you have different things that can leverage the blockchain for you. You just got to figure out how to tell a computer to tell it what to do. And that's going to be something that I think changes the game for a lot of people once they understand how that blockchain technology ties into the different aspects of their life. They may already be leveraging it.
I think there's a lot of negativity associated with some of the key terms that you mentioned. Blockchain, probably a lot of people don't really understand that. NFTs for the past 2 years have gotten a lot of negative press because you have a lot of people doing, art or selling it for ridiculous amounts of money. But then you had miscreants going in there to say, hey, I can make a quick buck on this. So trying to sift through the technology is not bad. Unfortunately, people are the ones that kind of manipulate that technology and try to social engineer people left and right. So again, fascinating. I really love this topic.
A good use case on NFTs, now you brought that up, because that is very valid. I know NFTs have gotten a lot of negative publicity as of late, but rightfully so. I've been participating in NBA Top Shot. I don't know if you know what that is, but essentially it's the NBA's version of NFTs, which I think that's where the value add is with NFTs. What they do is they clip up different highlights for different players and they put it out as an NFT. So let's say you buy an NFT of LeBron James' game in Cleveland, and you get that NFT, it may be worth X today, but then when he retires, it's like a baseball card or a basketball card. Over time, that's going to appreciate in value, and that's the value of an NFT, right? So I think back to like kids looking to get into content creation and digital real estate. Yeah, you're looking to put it out there so that over time it appreciates in value, so that NFT might not be worth what you'd like it to be today, but as you continue and your brand continues to grow, that brings the value of your NFT up. So I think, a lot of people lost a lot of money, but the industry wasn't as educated, hence the business and the need to educate people. But I think once people end it and they start, putting their own things out over time, they'll start to see that return, especially as the blockchain gets more indoctrinated.
That's the best way to describe it. It's collectible. I think the analogy, baseball cards, basketball cards is the way to frame that. So one question for you that I had, and don't want to put you on the spot, but so video fakes or deep fakes. So now I'm putting my ugly face on YouTube now, which I never thought I would. But now somebody can get my image, get my voice, and put me in a compromised position to say, ooh, Danny said this. And then now I'm on PR mode trying to say, hey, no, I did not say that. So how do you combat? Is the blockchain a way to do that? And is there anybody doing that now? So company X, hey, I want to put this video for Inclusive Cyber, episode 10 with Frantz on the blockchain. So now our content is verified. Is there any companies doing that right now? And is that something that is feasible?
Not that I'm aware of, but I'm sure that it is likely feasible and probably happening somewhere in the world. But I think to your point about deepfakes, I think that's a bigger issue that we don't even, it's like NFTs. How do we start to approach this large issue before it becomes a bigger problem for a lot of people who are innocent in this? So I do think that that is possible, but I also think it's something that is probably been happening for a very long time, and it's that we're getting the right eyes on it. So I do see solutions coming out, and I think back to that point about trying to focus on things like emerging technology at GuideScope and the blockchain. It's like, as these companies start to put out whatever content and information that's going to be useful for me, then I pass it on to the industry, and then we all start to find solutions for real big problems that are happening. But to your point about deepfake, I've been thinking a lot about deepfakes as of late, especially as someone who's trying to get into digital real estate and the content space. I did think of this idea. It's like, why do we need the company? If I can create a deepfake of myself, and not for nefarious purposes, but teach it the content that I'm going to be putting out in written format, I can just technically tell the deepfake to go teach the course on the YouTube or wherever and put the content out myself. And now I've got 10 of me teaching 10 different subjects instead of the one of me being able to do one subject. I see a use case for deepfakes now that can be more positive than some of the more negative connotations. And then how can you build on that? Haven't gotten that far yet. How do you make a deepfake of yourself? Haven't gotten that far yet. Again, I'm still learning. I'm not stuck in this is what I want to do. It's always how can I add on so then I can
Yeah.
pass that down while also building on the foundation I've created.
I think we could be here for hours just talking about deepfakes and that force multiplier. So I think the terminology would have to change. So it wouldn't be a deepfake, but it would be an avatar of Frantz or of GuideScope, and then just being transparent with the users to say, hey, I approve this message and this is all coming from me, but it's in a digital format.
NFT. You
Right.
could put out an NFT and then they.
Yeah, fascinating discussion. I think I might ping you up on the side to discuss this more. But let's talk about your book. You said that you did a book. What's the name of the book and why did you decide to write one?
It's called Nabir's Call, The Digital Awakening. And I think it ties right into the theme of GuideScope, but on a more younger level. The goal is to be able to teach kids. I think a great comparison would be like a Harry Potter. I think I know so many people in my life who like Harry Potter, but when I was reading Harry Potter as a kid, I didn't really have that community until I was older. So it was very interesting that we all read this book that left such an imprint on us that we all can relate to this book. So I was like, why don't we have that for something like technology and AI? We use this stuff every day. There's this huge knowledge gap within it. And then I was also thinking about something like biology and how it ties in. Computers are pretty much very similar to the human body and how it works. Every piece has a specific function. So if we know the body, why don't so many people know the computer the way they know the body? And I was thinking, okay, this needs a story to be able to teach kids that, yeah, the same way you can understand your body, you can definitely understand a computer, which will then help you understand AI and how that could impact the future that we're all going to be a part of. And I think it's going to be a great resource for any kids looking to just be curious and explore an area that they're already dealing with by having a phone in their hand every single day, but not knowing how to use it.
That's pretty cool. Did you leverage AI to write it, or was this a story that you had inside of you?
I did leverage AI to write the story, but I had the format, the characters, how I wanted to portray the story. It was really the actual writing of some of the content that was going to take me a long time to do. Again, now I have AI that can help, that's written this whole story for me. I just had to give it the detailed outline. And I think that's what pretty much working is going to kind of be going forward. I need an idea and an outline. AI is going to help me do the rest. So if I can understand how to tell AI what to do and how to expand on that, eventually the two of us are going to be able to get this to where it needs to be. And that's all. It took me maybe 2 months.
That's awesome.
And it was really putting it out, reading it through, read everything, made any edits that I wanted to, but the overall tying together of the story, AI helped a lot.
It's your digital assistant without giving you any attitude, right? Awesome. I'll make sure to include that in the show notes, and I'll probably be purchasing a copy here in a couple of days. In our previous, calls, we talked about strategic versus tactical. And what did you want to convey about that? And what does that mean to you?
I think that just even being back to corporate America in that type of environment, I think, yeah, you're either strategic or you're tactical. And do the two always get along? Not always. It's unfortunate, but I think that's kind of the beauty of it all. Yeah, we're all very different and we come with different perspectives. So I think at first I used to be very apprehensive to work with someone who I believed to be more technical because I thought I was more of a strategic, let me line this up and then make the right move, versus someone who I believe to be more tactical. I think they make just as good a move. I just like to have maybe some conversation or some thought out type of structure before making the move, because when that tactical person makes a move, sometimes it could be a misstep. And now you've moved so fast that it's going to be hard to then, take that step back and figure it out, which back to just even being laid off myself, I think that's a tactical decision. Is it a strategic decision? Because now look at the conversation that we're having and you can hear the value. Someone didn't have a strategic conversation. It was a tactical decision, which still a decision needed to be made. So I think, yeah, that's business, that's life. I think both sides are very valuable. But for me, I've always been one of those people. If I'm going to make a decision on something, I've reflected on it. I've thought long and hard about it. I've meditated on it. And I really do, if I'm going to speak on it, strategically think this is the best thing to do. I would never just say, this is my tactical opinion.
I appreciate your insight, because I think you're right. It's going to be context and time based. If you're in a room full of engineers trying to build something or fix a particular application, that's going to be a little bit more tactical. But to actually create that application, that had to have been in that strategic mindset to say, okay, what is this application going to solve? What gap is in the industry? So it's kind of weaving back and forth, putting on your strategic hat and your tactical hat, and being able to navigate and communicate between the two is key. Otherwise, you're going to have a lot of miscommunication. I'm on LinkedIn quite a bit, and just every day, probably 2 or 3 times, I'm seeing people being laid off. And I would agree, it's a very tactical decision. And not to go down a rabbit hole, I think that's how Wall Street is. It's a very short-term perspective, and that tends to be a little bit tactical instead of, hey, let's look at what this company is going to be doing in 5 or 10 years. One other question I wanted to ask you, throughout your career in corporate America, and I guess primarily corporate America, any obstacles that you encountered, and what were they, and how did you overcome them?
I would say my main obstacle that I think hopefully resonates with a lot of people who may be a first generation American or, entering corporate America for the first time, would be my family. My family was a big obstacle getting into this, just being the only person in my family who's ever attempted to go to college, been in corporate America, has to work these hours, has to understand how to navigate these political relationships and whatnot to then excel in your career, and the sacrifice that you have to make to even be in that position. So I think that it came with a lot of stress that I couldn't really then go to my family with, because they don't necessarily understand what it is, how it even works. So that I then had to figure that out on my own. I learned things like mindfulness and meditation to get past those roadblocks. But I would say losing my grandmother pre-pandemic was something that really forced me to sit down and reflect on even some of the things I thought that allowed me to get past it. I realized I really had to invest in the time to address it. I just learned the coping mechanisms that allow me to keep going. That losing this job, my most previous job, based off the layoffs, really gave me the time to sit down and let me just call my mom, let me just call my brother, let me just call whoever. And yeah, let me figure out how to lead in that aspect as well as this other aspect, instead of prioritizing this corporate life that I was living or this job. Let me figure out how to lean back on my family, because yeah, they're the people who allowed me to even be in this position in the first place. I may not have realized it as I was working so hard, but to like go through it and then really not have the job or not have the things that I thought I'd have, but still have that then reminded me, oh, they've been there. I just may not have viewed it that way because I may have been prioritizing this corporate American lifestyle.
Just hearing you talk makes me think of a Netflix documentary that I just recently saw. Forgot the name of it. It was, I think, something about blue zones. So parts of the world where you have people living over 100 years. The host was trying to find themes. I think they went to 5 or 6 different blue zones. Okinawa, somewhere off of Greece, and then I think Costa Rica. And the biggest thing was that social fabric, that social network, that you had a reason to live. And to help you cope. Life is not going to be perfect for everyone. You're going to have your trials and tribulations, but how you cope with that, it's having that close family or really close friends to really help you navigate and cope and talk it through. And a lot of people, unfortunately, don't have that. In this country, I can't even begin to think of other parts of the world, especially war zones, where that trauma is just, it's baked in, or it's getting baked into their DNA, unfortunately. I appreciate you bringing up family, because that is key, right? So definitely, resonate with that. I will make sure to have all your great content here so everybody listening can find. You're doing a lot of great stuff, Frantz. I wish you continued success, not only for this year, but for however long you want to do this until you get bought out, and then you could relax and have fun. One thing that I always close, the podcast with reading. Reading is magical, for the lack of a better term. But what books right now have you recently read or currently reading just resonate with you from a day-to-day perspective?
I would say Ray Dalio, Principles. That was a really good book. I think that back to tactical versus strategic and the need for open and transparent conversation for that to even attempt to go well. Reading his book definitely gave me a higher level perspective of how that can go, because in my personal life, it hasn't been going as well. So it's like, okay, maybe I'm not viewing it from that higher level perspective. So to hear him break down the entirety of his business and how they communicate, that then allowed me to take that and go into my own personal life and have a more professional relationship with my customers, my peers, my family. Like everything is a business that has some type of structure to it. And just seeing how someone like Ray Dalio presented it, he's from Connecticut as well. Okay. So I think that was an easy go-to for me.
I read it, I think 2 years ago, but I think I have to circle back because at the time didn't really resonate with some of the ideas that he was saying. So, Frantz.
And I'm big on Audible as well. If anybody doesn't like to actually sit down and read, I am big on Audible for that very reason. And I do think you get a lot of the author's personality that I don't think can come across as you're reading it, and it does help soften the information.
That's a good point for all you runners out there. Definitely get this book on Audible. So Frantz, again, thank you for being on this episode, and we'll talk soon.
Absolutely. Appreciate it.